The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Michael Goedde. Michael is the VP of Global Data Operations for ICON. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, JP. Happy to be here.
So, Michael, let's start with yourself, please, as we do with all our guests. Could you give us an overview of your journey in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and what's led you to where you are today as the Global VP of Data Ops for ICON?
Sure, happy to do so. I did start in the industry 32 years ago, back in Germany, where I got my degree in computer science and mathematics. I did like the technical environment and was more by pure coincidence ended up in my first job in clinical research as a SAS programmer. Became then one of the early clinical data managers when clinical data management was just starting to become part of the roadmap. I worked a total of 15 years at a large pharma company, Aventis, which today is known as Sanofi, and then moved to the US in 2001 and worked for several biotech companies. Before, in 2014, I moved over from the sponsor side, as we say in our healthcare industry, to the CRO side, the contract research organization side, which is basically service providers for pharma and biotech. And since 2018, I work for ICON in the role of, as you said, Vice President of Global Data Operations. I should mention that part of my career, always an advocate for the industry and the profession of clinical data management and data science, where I served a total of 5 years on the board for the Society for Clinical Data Management, which is broadly recognized as the authority and thought leadership organization for clinical data management and data science globally.
Thank you for that, Michael. ICON plays such a pivotal role in the broader life sciences industry, which I want to get to, but I want to start with your role as the Global VP of Data Operations. Can you describe what your responsibilities are and give us some insight into the broader data operations teams, from size, the types of positions that exist, and what it's like day to day?
Yeah, it is a very exciting group. So as the name suggests, Global Data Operations, it is a global team. We have team members all over the world in like China, India, all over Europe, South Africa. In fact, I just got back from a trip visiting my team in South Africa, a fantastic team that is continuing to grow there as well, and all over the Americas as well. It's a unique and nice challenge to have to bring global teams together to work together with a common purpose, which is ultimately bringing clean data to our regulatory agencies with the goal of bringing new drugs to the market. In terms of size of my team, it's around 650 people globally. And when people hear data management, the first thing coming to mind when you're familiar with the industry is to build databases, typically in electronic data capture systems, in EDC systems, and then make sure that the data integrity is to the standards that are needed for global submissions. But the industry has evolved over time, and this is how we adjusted our roles and responsibilities as well within global data operations. Sum it up on what we're doing is making sure that every system that collects clinical data, so not just EDC systems, it could be sensors, it could be electronic patient-reported outcomes, any sort of lab data or third-party vendor data, making sure that my team is involved, making sure that this data is collected in the most efficient way and with the highest integrity standards. The process then continues from a flow perspective in terms of ingesting this data and reviewing the data from a more direct data cleaning approach, all the way ranging to more sophisticated data analytic approaches where we are starting using some ML and AI technology. Before we then obviously then log our databases and turn this data over with the right formats to our colleagues in statistics and statistical programming to get those data sets ready for analysis.
Mikhail, I'd like to stay on the topic of the projects that you're working on, specifically focusing on uses of aspects of AI, whether it be data science, automation, machine learning, and how it's applicable to the impact of the business. You're all overseeing all the data operations. Could you highlight or share with us some of the projects that you and your team are working on and how that's going to impact Icon's business as a whole and what it will mean for the company should these projects be successful?
Great question, JP. And I can maybe answer it in two ways. First of all, I am convinced and know from my interactions with my colleagues in the industry that Icon is playing an industry leading role when it comes to the move to data science. And why I can say that is traditionally in clinical data management, you would have a role like a lead data manager who would be the accountable person for the full system environment, but then also the data analytics parts, the data review part, and logging databases. What we've seen over the years at Icon is that our clinical trial industry is changing. Buzzwords out there are decentralized clinical trials, which basically means that the patients that are part of a clinical trial don't have to go to a clinical site anymore, that many of the data can be collected right at the home or from a handheld device. So that system landscape has become much more complicated, sophisticated, and needs some more dedicated attention. On the other hand, the clinical data itself has augmented as well in volume, in complexity, and things that you can do with this clinical data. So how we reacted to that trend at our company is that we split the role of the lead data manager, which was a very established role, into a clinical data scientist lead and a clinical system lead, where you have then industry experts focusing on the one hand on the systems, making sure that those systems are up to standard, and then the other role focusing on the data analytics parts. Obviously, those two individuals, and I just mentioned those two roles that are key roles within my team, have to work very closely together to make sure that the systems that are being put in place are perfect for the clinical protocol at hand and are supporting the overall data flow. On the other hand, the data scientist lead who's looking at the data has to be also very intimately involved in the system setup, making sure that the protocol requirements are also met. So that is one area in terms of how Icon has positioned itself to embrace and lead the industry when it comes to the move of data science. When it comes to the AI part of your questions, I already mentioned that data and clinical trials have changed dramatically. Traditional, you would have 1, 2, 3 data sources being EDC, maybe a central lab where you get data and a randomization system. What we're seeing now is that our clinical trials on average have 8, 9, 10 different data sources coming maybe directly from a patient, which will be called ePro, electronic patient reported outcome, or an EDC, or lab, or specialty lab. They come in different sizes and volumes and standards as we put together. With a clinical data risk platform that we have been putting in place at Icon, we have now very sophisticated methods to make sure that we can review this data on an item level, patient level, regional level, site level, comparing studies if we had to, which gives us really good insights into data trends, giving us the tools to take proactive action when we might identify a risk that we have to look closer at to take the right actions for it.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Michael, you and I were speaking offline about the impact of data analytics and data science, and it's important to view them in their own verticals and specialization. When you're looking at your organization and you're managing the various aspects, what approach do you take to ensuring that data science has a real clear focus on what they're doing and separating that from data analytics?
So as I mentioned, we do have those dedicated roles that we transform to face the new reality around clinical trials and the more complicated landscape. Maybe one analogy that I can give you, JP, is that traditional data management would look at data more on an item level with so-called edit checks and sending out queries. You could compare this, if you think about a tree and a forest, is that we data managers were looking more at the leaves of a tree, and we would once in a while find a leaf that doesn't look right, and we would send a query to the site or to central lab to trying to understand why is this leaf not looking green as it should be, for example. What we're seeing is that with the trend towards data science is that we're not looking really at leaves anymore. We still do that in the background as well, but we look at the whole tree, in that analogy being the patient, for example. Is this patient with all his or her leaves making overall sense? Is the data that is being presented to us overall consistent with what our models would tell us? Or do we see outliers that would make us question the integrity behind the data of this patient? And then what we are now seeing with more sophisticated tools, as I mentioned before, is that we basically almost have a drone flying over the forest where we can see certain areas that could represent a clinical site falling outside of the normal data that we would expect from a site. Or we could think about a region of that forest being a country that is maybe not interpreting the clinical protocol we're working on consistently, so that we could perform more training on that one. And if this whole forest is one study, if we would fly even higher up with that drone and we would see different forests then representing, in this analogy, different studies, we could see why are certain data trends behaving one way in one study compared to another study. There are sometimes fascinating data trends that the people in my team can pick up on. And by the way, I should mention as well that at Icon, one thing that differentiates, I think, is the cross-functional nature of our work, that obviously we within global data operations don't do that alone. We work hand in hand with our medical reviewers, with our clinical operations people, with our biostatisticians to make sure that we get a full picture of reviewing data and take the appropriate measures on the data science approaches we are taking.
Again, bringing it back to something that you and I spoke about off interview, was that the team that you've assembled, and most importantly, the culture that you've been able to build and nurture there. Given your team is spread across multiple locations and lots of different skill sets and professions, how have you been able to build the culture that you have and describe what that looks like to potentially a future employee at Icon?
Culture, I can tell you, for me, and we live it, everybody of those 650 people, culture is our number one priority, our top goal, being people focused. And I don't just say that, I can proudly say that over the last 4 years. The truth is that we are a publicly traded company, we are a business, and we also want to make profits and gains. That's very clear. Having said this, we are more successful when we have people that see that our leadership respects work-life balance, that we want to do work the right way, that our leadership is accessible, that we can reach out with controversial questions, topics. One mantra that we have within my team, and it's propagated throughout different activities that Icon is doing in all levels and in all business units, is that everybody has a voice. We welcome people with different opinions, different points of view, which addresses maybe the first part of your question. Working in a global team, and I did mention all the regions that we work together on, you get such a diverse input of new ideas, be it differences from different generations, different upbringing, different cultures. It's very rewarding. And when people join Icon, they might hear that from other places, but they actually see that we live this at Icon. One manifestation is every Monday we have a global data operations leadership team where we have everybody from every region on that call. It doesn't matter which time they're in there on, and we share this information and we bring it together. On a personal note, and we sometimes see what is going on globally, where sometimes there seems to be more isolation going on. I love leading a group where people, regardless of their country of origin, regardless of borders, beliefs, come together with this common goal. And people are signing up for it. I can tell you that when people join Icon, one of the most frequent feedbacks I'm getting is that they are amazed and wowed by the culture that we have.
Michael, thank you so much for that. I want to continue to talk about the team and culture, but I want to do so looking ahead. Obviously, Icon plays a massive role in the broader life sciences industry, and there's a growing investment in AI and data, which impacts your group directly. When you look at the project roadmap over the next 12 to 24 months, what are you most excited about? Your team, your divisions, impact, and what it can mean for Icon as a business?
There are so many ways to answer that question. I'm excited about many parts of the future at Icon and what I'm planning, not just for my team, but again, we're working together with so many other functions across Icon. What comes to mind first is that we are running several academy programs within my team at Icon. We have one in China, in India. We're about to start one in South Africa, in Canada, and also in Swansea, in Wales, our main academies for global data operations. We have a long-standing tradition bringing new people, fresh graduates in to my team. What is interesting, and I spoke a little bit about the new generational input, those are 20-something-year-olds joining that grew up with an environment where they are surrounded by artificial intelligence like Alexa, Siri's, GPS systems. It's very enriching that when you have somebody like myself with 32 years of experience in the industry being confronted with those kinds of new ideas and bringing them together. So that excites me. What also excites me is that I'm seeing much more trust and willingness for people to evolve. What I mean by that is our industry has to constantly reinvent ourselves in terms of adjusting to new regulatory environments, to new systems. And you might sometimes hear groups that there might be a change fatigue. But I see it more, and I think that our teams are seeing it as well, that we are evolving with the trends in the industry, and we're trying to lead it, not just react to it. Change is a constant for our industry, like for so many other industries, and we have found a way to make this to a beneficial, dynamic work environment. And again, I'm very proud of my team that they are also seeing it as an evolution, and people are eager to learn and to adopt those new methods of working, systems of working, their new roles, and being part of this leading the industry kind of mindset that we have established over the last years.
Final question from me then, Michael. Looking at the growth and the future plans for your team, what impact is that going to have to a headcount growth? Could you talk to us about where you see opportunities to add heads to your team? What sort of positions are you going to need to hire for? And when you're speaking to candidates, part two of the question is when you're speaking to candidates about the mission, the environment, the culture at Icon, what is it that you tell them that gets them excited enough to join your team over somebody other great companies hiring?
Let me start with the second part of your question. What I find exciting, and I found it exciting since day one that I joined the industry, is that it doesn't matter in which role you join Icon. Talking about the GTO roles, you can be a system validation person, a database designer, a clinical system lead, data scientist lead, a clinical data coordinator, a product manager. We have so many roles here, and people with the right background see that they fit those roles. You become part of a team of hundreds of people that will be accountable to bring over years new drugs to the market. And when you are part of a team after many years working, that you can truthfully say to your friends, to your family, say, hey, I worked on this new oncology drug, I worked on this new dermatology drug, or whatever indication it might be as we work across all therapeutic areas there. This fills you with purpose, with pride. You made lives better. It's a great industry to be in. So that's fantastic. To be part of, or to answer your first part of the question, since day one that I started at Icon, we always had open positions. We are constantly growing. The outlook for our market and industry segment looks very strong, and we're constantly hiring. So there are open positions that can be found on our Icon webpage, and there are opportunities on industry events to also see what we are doing. And we are one of the companies that always encourage people to go out there and be outspoken, challenge the status quo, and help us to continue to grow with, again, the ultimate goal, as we have been doing for many years, to making people's lives better.
Mikhail, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. Great to learn about your own background, long time focus in one particular industry. Great insight into the work you do at Icon, a particular emphasis on the culture and impact that you guys can have as an organization and a team, and growing all the time and looking for new people to add to that culture. So we appreciate your time, and we wish you, the team, and everyone there at Icon the best of luck in the months and years to come, and look forward to having you back on the show.
Thank you so much, Pia. True pleasure. Anytime.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.